Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Wrench Factor. I'm your host today, Nick Haase, the founder here at MaintainX, and this is where we explore the technologies and innovations shaping the future of industrial asset management. So here today we're going to discuss the biggest challenges facing frontline professionals, sharing insights from the field, strategies to achieve best-in-class operations. So today we're looking at the state of AI inside of digital transformation projects and teams, and why the bar for ROI has shot through the roof. Joining me today is Willem Sundblad, the CEO of Oden Technologies. Willem, great to have you on.
Thank you for having me, Nick.
So Willem, just for the audience watching home here, what's the quick kind of high-level overview? What does Oden do, and how do you fit into this ecosystem?
Absolutely. So we're a data and AI company focused on manufacturing. The main thing that we do with our product Process AI is that we provide real-time recommendations to the operators on how they can improve the process. And so that comes from data labeling driven by machine learning, but also predictions and recommendations on adjustments that they can make to save costs, increase speed, and improve quality.
Love it. See, it's everything about what we're trying to do here with AI is how do we do less with more? How do we help people be more efficient and effective? And if you haven't heard of Oden before, they've got a pretty cool way that they're approaching that. So you've got a lot of experience kind of working with digital transformation leaders today and teams across industry. And so from your vantage point right now, like where are a lot of folks on their AI journey? Is it still like pilot scale, still exploring? What's that look like?
A little bit of everything. We have customers that are globally scaling and scaling at really rapid pace. We also have customers who are, still in the starting gates, really. So it is very much all over the place. What I've seen mostly is that the larger the company, the more likely you are to have gone further. Unfortunately, that doesn't need to be the case, but that's just what I see in the industry.
And it's definitely interesting because I haven't always seen that. The agility sometimes is with smaller organizations, and now with AI, they seem to have a little more motivation to move quickly, and they seem to have bigger expectations as well. Like some of the conversations I've had with executive sponsors on some of these projects, and both from vendor side, the vendor side and the client side, is that they're actually expecting like a higher payback, 3 to 5x higher than what maybe they would ask for another type of digital transformation project that didn't have AI. It's way above this traditional automation project. So why do you think, why are you hearing, are you hearing the same things, and why are buyers setting these steep targets?
Yeah, no, definitely hearing the same thing. And we actually heard it the first time I heard it was last year from a CIO at one of our customers. And they said that it was a board requirement from them to have, at least 3 to 5x payback in the first year. And the board said that because they had heard it elsewhere from other boards that they were on. So I don't know if it's a game of telephone, but I think it definitely makes sense to have a high payback compared to an automation initiative. If you're talking about OpEx versus CapEx, that's just the basics. But I think another aspect is if they know that not everything will be successful, the winners will pay for the experiments that don't bear fruit. And so there might be a little bit of that as well. I think they've also seen that when it works really, really well. And so even that 3 to 5x payback is probably low when it's really working. So it's a little bit of a combination of what everyone else is doing, a little bit of the kind of portfolio thinking almost, especially since when it comes to true AI, like generative AI applications, it is probably still very much in the experimentation phase, and they want the good ones to pay for all the other experiments.
Yeah, it's kind of strange. It's like the venture capital industry almost, where you're going to bet on a lot of companies, especially at the early stage. Most of them go out of business, but the ones that do win end up making the return for the whole fund. And I don't see that sort of dynamic. I haven't really seen that across these industrial teams and the way that they've been thinking historically with digital transformation. And so it's kind of interesting to see that mindset start to come in, creep in. And I think the upside, or at least the benefit, is that these projects, when they work, they do tend to have pretty high ROIs, but it's more fun when that's a bit of a surprise and excitement, not the, the expectation, because that's not really like, I think it's not necessarily the best way. We're so early on in this journey that it's, you got to give yourself some opportunity to still learn. So they are accepting failures and trying to double down on these winners, the ones that are scaling that you're seeing. But why do they fail? And like, why are some of these projects that they are working on failing? What are some of the trends you're noticing? And what would your advice be to executives to help try to avoid, falling into those traps to begin with?
I think it's the same thing as, other projects that they would be doing. It's, do you have unclear expectations? Do you have unclear goals? And is it even, feasible or possible given your data or infrastructure to achieve it? That's true for other projects that a manufacturer is going to take on, that if you don't have those things, your chances of success are pretty slim. I think it's a little bit compounded with AI because there might be even more like lack of clarity on what is possible and what is a good use case and what is what is the level of quality that you're going for. And so one of the things that I saw one of our customers do that I thought was really useful is that, because sometimes it can be from the executive side, and that the executive says, oh, let's just go do AI here.
Do AI, sprinkle it on there somehow.
Exactly.
I don't know what it is, but we should
and
do
the
it.
And the front line is like, hey, I don't want to do this. I want you to help me solve this very tangible problem right here. So one of the things that they did was they actually did training for the leadership team on like the fundamentals of AI, what it is, what it isn't, what's a requirement for a good use case, what is, so that they can be better stewards of the decisions internally to say, we're going to focus on this and not this, because we don't think that the technology is there to achieve this anymore. The other side of it is, it depends, like it really comes down to have you scoped it right, even in the beginning. Right away whether it's going to work or not based on the expectations, the feasibility. And I'll just to be a little bit more specific on the expectations. Some of these models are, probabilistic. Whether it's a machine learning model that is making a prediction or a generative model that is going to generate some form of output, it is a probabilistic model, not a deterministic model. So if you're going to generate, let's say, a prediction to an operator that's going to have a probability of accuracy of 95, 96%, that is just, there's going to be failures. And if that is not acceptable, then you need a different way of interacting with it, because then maybe the user isn't the operator. And maybe it is the engineer, where you're speeding up and augmenting their workflows rather than trying to do something deterministic. And so it can be about the use case. Maybe you think it is help the operator with a certain thing, but the more realistic and achievable thing to do is speed up the workflow for the engineer so that they can be way more effective in their interaction with the operators or the supervisors. Use it for automation, for management tasks and curation of what needs to be done. And so finding the right balance of what's the outcome that you want to drive, what is the technology capable of, and do you have the data to be able to do it in the first place?
It makes a ton of sense. And I see that sort of trap people fall in, where they want to try to solve every problem with just a broad brush of AI, and they think it's, it can just sprinkle a little bit here and there, and those are just not working for anyone. And I think, they don't describe them that way and sell them that way internally. That's a bit of my own spin on how it actually is. But when they zoom out and sort of realize that's what they're doing, it's kind of like, oh, of course that's not going to work. So it's like, can we just is this something that a human in the loop can be empowered to be dramatically more efficient and effective? Because maybe you can't resource hundreds of engineers to solve this problem. Or maybe you can't find 100 engineers, even if you have the resources to bring them in. The talent's just not there. So how do we make the limited resources we have way more efficient?
Totally. And that is where AI is most successful today. That is, whether it's looking at coding, whether it's looking at generating copy, generating images, automating analysis. Most of it is just about speeding up workflows so that one person can do way more than they were able to do before.
Yeah, but you still need that human judgment for a lot of this to be really, high value. And I think you still get the high value. That's the thing that folks don't always connect. Is it's like just because the humans in the loop doesn't stop the ROI story.
Oh, 100%. I'll give you a quick example there. I mean, we got a customer where there was no operator in the night shift that had been there more than 7 months. And, high product mix, tons of lines. And so the performance difference between, seasoned operators that had been there for 20 years on the day shift versus the, new starters on the night shift was dramatic. And through giving, AI-driven recommendations to both of them, learning what are the really seasoned people doing and how can you provide those recommendations to the operators, they're now at even with an average increase in output between 18 and 20%.
Wow. That's a big deal. And so I guess if you're talking to an exec and maybe they're pinging, they're wanting to make this a little bit collaborative as far as how do you make me look good? I'm sold on the concept of where we start here, but if you need to build a 90 to 120, 180 day sprint to prove ROI and say, hey, this is the right approach to do that, how would you kind of walk them through that?
So we tend to do that in the at the starting point of the engagement. And the thing that we tend to look at is what's the current variability in order to understand, is there a gap that you can close and drive, a real tangible outcome, like the performance example between day shift and night shift. If you see that type of variability, that there is value to capture by just eliminating that variability. Then you need to drive down into what's causing that variability, how can you learn so that you can actually provide the recommendations. But it starts off with what's the variability or outcome that you want to drive. And then you also really need to assess the data, whether that's possible or not to achieve. And then you need to iterate directly with those users fast in order to actually get that, speed. If you want to prove it within 90 days, the infrastructure needs to be there, the data needs to be there, the variability to close needs to be there. We did that where, we launched a customer and we just went on site for the first 48 hours and covered day shift, night shift, day shift, night shift, because then you've trained 4 shifts in 48 hours. Long days.
Yeah.
You're off to the races at that point.
Yeah, it makes sense. And the customers I'm seeing that are deploying really, because I even know folks that are working on, and these are definitely more of the Fortune 100, Fortune 50 types that have some of these resources, but they're deploying machine learning engineers to very discrete data rich processes where there's high value opportunity to improve them. And those are their areas that they're getting quick wins on. It's not boil the ocean. It's not even necessarily an entire line. It's just a specific process on the line that once you're able to get those results, start to scale on that specific function across your site or your organization and learn more, that starts to get the buy-in. And I think that's where there's an important cultural moment that you're having to shoot for as well internally to say, can we build trust that this system's going to work versus I think that's the cost of some of these poorly run AI programs that people are putting into place right now, is that how are you impacting the culture of your operation by sending them all this noise and all this stuff that, I went and followed all all the pings or all the to-dos, and we're still stuck with the same problem. That's, you're kind of corrupting your team's trust for future.
And also, I think that, like, I mean, for us as technology providers, that's where we have to be very, I mean, both humble and understanding of the importance of that user in the loop, especially in the beginning, on honing it. Because even if the executive wanted it, it's not going to happen unless the operator, who's been there for a really long time, is going to, trust it and use it. And so in that like 48-hour example, there's a lot of like back and forth to like tune the model to give the recommendations in the right way. And the starting point is never perfect. So I remember we actually, the like first time we showed a recommendation, they said, "Oh, this is as intelligent as my 5-year-old. It's just asking, why don't you do that? Or why?" And after 4 iterations on the recommendations of just them actually providing the feedback, it was then, it's like they have an engineer in their pocket that is truly helping them, and didn't need any revisions after that four cranks on the tuning. And that was just in the first shift.
That's incredible. Yeah, I think that's a mistake. Some companies aren't nearly as bad and are actually proactive with this. But I come into so many, prospects and clients that we work with where there's a vast difference between the concrete side of the house versus the carpeted side, and the execs don't go in and actually consider how that frontline operator is going to engage with the processes that they are very thoughtfully architecting, and then they don't get the results they want, or they don't get the buy-in and the adoption. Then it doesn't matter how well designed it is, because you do have to kind of go through some iterative process. There's not a one-size-fits-all tool that works out of the box for everyone to your specific needs and process without a little bit of fine-tuning. And so I think it's a testament to your understanding of that as a partner of these folks, that you bring your team in early on and kind of work through some of those iterative cycles firsthand. That way you can overcome some of those obstacles.
And it's the only way you get real feedback too. Like, you have to go there with steel toe boots, shake their hand, and show that you actually value and trust them and respect them. Because they're not going to give you the true feedback over a Teams call, because they're not going to go there. If they're operating the machinery, they're not going to go into the conference room and join the Teams call.
Yeah. Well, I do want to do a quick little lightning round here of like, how do we, we go to we've gone to some of the same events. We're familiar. You and I are both pretty familiar with the landscape of what vendors are, at least advertising. And I think that's part of our obligation as well, is to sort of be thoughtful about how to set expectations in a way that we will get you the results that we sell you, rather than promise the moon and can't do it. So what's like the biggest AI myth in manufacturing today?
There's definitely a little bit of misconception of, AI should just be able to do this.
Yeah.
And I think a big, problem can be when there's just root challenges with the data itself, because it isn't magic. And if the data isn't there, it's just going to be really, really difficult to do. And by data not being there, it can come in many different forms. It can be that there is, low precision on something. That means that the model isn't trained with a real ground truth. It can be that anything that is, manually recorded has inaccurate timestamps, or has a little bit of judgment in it, which also makes that for a really hard, ground truth. That's why one of the things that we really double down on is data labeling itself. Because if you can, we work a lot with time series data. The time series data is only useful if you have labels to it.
What does it mean?
And so automating the labeling to the largest extent possible, way more than what currently exists in like an MES system or connected worker solution, for different states of the process, labeling certain patterns that need to be detected. Because if you do know through the labels what's happening at any given time, then it's much easier to provide recommendations, how-to guides, what's the so what, or what they should do with it. The hard part is sometimes you walk into a facility and you're like, well, we have the data here, but nothing here, and we have the
context
data
there.
here.
Yeah.
And
I
you're
tell
like,
folks,
well,
you got to eat your vegetables a little bit, Just,
yeah.
It's not the most exciting project you'll get to work on, but it will pay the most dividends if you do it right. And you don't generally have to do it over and over again if you do it right up front. But it's not not the end of it. What do you think is like the most underhyped opportunity? Like thing, like, oh, come on, folks, this should be bigger. There should be more inbound enthusiasm for this.
I actually think that it's probably the data labeling itself, because it is like vegetables, and it is, no one's like going around asking for it.
Yeah.
But once you do it and you see the things that you can do with it, because it creates completely new ways for them to interact with the data. And it makes all the other systems that you can integrate that data with more effective, because they're often missing the context. That's a lot of what's difficult, because like the operators on the line, they probably have full context in the moment, because they see things, they hear things, they're looking at multiple different things. But from a system perspective, a lot of that is stripped.
It's not.
And then you have to go to multiple systems to try to piece it all together again.
Yeah. How do we bring that tribal knowledge into data so that we can enrich it and help them be better? And the data labeling is very, very key to that process. I agree. And so, like, last lightning round question here: what's the one KPI every plant should track?
Oof. Now I feel like now you're going to start a fight.
It can be controversial. Yeah.
I just know that like
right
the answer for a lot of people is OEE, but then you'll have a lot of people fighting about, oh no, that's a really bad metric. Man, it's just so process dependent too. Because we've got customers that have really good quality and it's all about performance and utilization. We've got customers that have insane quality problems, and it doesn't matter anything about what performance or utilization does, because they're just fighting to maintain quality. So I still think that the pillars of OEE are an indicator of where you should start.
Right.
So like, where's the biggest problem? Not that OEE is perfect, but it's at least a starting point of like, okay, what's the biggest problem that we can tackle right now?
Yeah. If you're struggling with asset availability, there's ways to get that up, right? There's quality and vice versa. Maybe the KPI they should track. I don't know if there's a buzzword for this yet. If there is, fill me in. Maybe we should make one. Is like, what percentage of your data is labeled?
Mm-hmm.
That'd be a good KPI that we could start to help folks understand how to make.
We do that. Well, at first it was just like about downtime reasons, but that's a fairly standard one. But now we're just expanding it to like, is the time actually labeled in a useful way?
Yeah. If anyone out there listening has an idea for that, we should call it. And it's like a buzzword that like consultants can get excited about too. It's too long of a phrase. So share it in the chat. We'll go from there. And that said, that's all we got time for today. I want a huge thank you to Willem for being here.
Thank you, Nick.
Yeah. Key takeaways here. Let's treat, folks are treating their AI projects like a portfolio, and we got to kill those losers early, scale the winners fast. For deeper insights, check the Smart Industry article linked in this post below. The Wrench Factor is live every other week. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, and we will we'll see you next time for another episode of Wrench Factor. Thank you all so much.
Thank you all.